Hi, I'm Bo. We're gonna start setting some bolts. Got these stop nuts because everything we do has to be able to withstand any vibrations that happen on the road. The walls are only going through a flange, a single piece of metal. So this 3-inch lag bolt goes through the 1.5 inch of wood, 1/4 inch max of metal, and has plenty to clear the washers and grab onto the nut. For the floor, the bolts are going through the double-walled frame of the trailer. I hadn't accounted for that. I'd gotten 4-inch bolts. I ended up having to go back and upgrade them to 6-inch. So one more thing I learned. I've been wanting to do this for years, like literally. 2016, I took a class from Pad Tiny Houses. D. Williams was the builder who worked with Iron Eagles to come up with this trailer design. So that's 7 years I've been wanting to do it. The placement of the walls is going to affect where I put the joists, because when you put down floor joists or wall studs, you're always planning for the material that goes on it, usually plywood 4x8 sheets. But in this case, we're not counting from here as our starting point. We're counting from wherever our wall is actually sitting. So that's going to throw off our measurements a little bit. And that's part of why I want to have all the wall placement set before I set the joists in place. Another thing that's very different about these tiny house trailers than a traditional structure is the subfloor does not sit underneath the wall. On a normal house, whatever your foundation is, by the time you've built up to your wooden plywood subfloor, that extends all the way out to the very edge of your frame, to this point. And then you put your wall on top of that. Not in this case. In this case, our wall is going to sit directly on the metal, although I'm going to put a sill sealer, some plastic material between the two so that water doesn't wick up in between them. So we'll have our wall, and then we're just going to have our plywood coming right up to it. So that's different, and down the line, it allows us to do several things we could not do on a traditional house, like pull up our floor, our entire floor, without affecting the walls. And I like that. So it's kind of like we have to think 1 or 2 steps ahead the entire time while we're building, which is pretty normal for building. It's just important to know what the steps are. So this piece here that we're going to build our wall on top of has many names, and probably depending who you ask, they're all interchangeable or they're all very specific to the application. We could call it a sill, we could call it a sole, we could call it a bottom plate. The crows say, no more with the grammar lesson, let's build stuff. But from what I understand, sill and sole have to do with a piece of pressure-treated wood on concrete, on different concrete applications. And bottom plate has to do with raw lumber wall on a wooden foundation. So none of those exactly match what we're doing here. I tend to call this a base plate. Then I've ripped these strips of plywood. Wow. The flange itself takes up space, and the inconsistency of the welding takes up space. So really what we end up with is our sheathing is still a 1/4 inch from the edge here. I don't love that. So this is where my friend Clyde Guruma was saying those flanges are limiting, and I'm kind of in agreement. I would like it to be that the sheathing goes behind them and ends up flush with this, but I don't see how that's possible and still end up with a completely straight wall. My intention is to put spacers like lath, which is about a 1/4 inch, between the sheathing and the siding. So that will make up this difference, and the siding will stick over. So it's okay. But like in terms of waterproofing, when we put our weather wrap down, well, I'm definitely going to caulk that edge. We might put some sort of flashing as well. I might watch a bunch of YouTube videos and see what other people did. So here's my thought on the flanges, on the wheel wells. Let's move over here. My thought is I would either not want them or want them around the entire vehicle. Oh, there are so many crows. Yeah, they are making a caw motion. Now we can pull measurements off of here and line out where our joists would be if we build from the back end. And we'll see how that works out with our bolt placement and how that works out with potential toilet or shower stall. Now we're going to start to make some assumptions about plumbing. And this is all about the drain. The center of a toilet drain has to be a minimum of 15 inches off a wall. So 15 is an important number here. Now for a shower, a typical width of a shower will be 32 or 36. So the drain at the midpoint is either at 16 or 18. So we have a range of 15 to 18 inches there that it's very likely to have a drain line in. But we also want to, that's the center of the drain line, so we want to move at least 3 inches over from our minimum and 3 inches over from our maximum. So we're at 12 to 21. We don't want to have a joist at 12 inches to 21 inches off the wall if we can avoid it. So I'm going to mark that space. Alright, so right in here, this is where we'd, all the way down, we'd prefer not to have a joist. Now comes the question of, are we putting our floor joists 16 inches on center or 24 inches on center? In a traditional house, it would be 16. We're building light here. And I'm definitely going to be the builder that gets frustrated at not throwing a bunch of wood at the project to make it super, super solid. But I'm going to force myself to build lighter on this one, so we're going 24 inch on center. Our plywood will be tongue and groove, so it should be just fine. So, if we measure off the back wall, 24 inches on center is right here. Our range where we don't want to joist is right here. So this seems to be the way to go to me. So the clamps are just holding the edge pieces in place, but that's where the walls will go. We've got all our bolts in. These joists are just kind of sitting there, more or less where they're gonna go. Then we're gonna come with more pink foam and fill this cavity, but not all the way out here. We have to put a little piece of wood here to catch our floor, because this surface and this surface are not level. These are not related at all.